What's up? How's everybody feeling out there? Guys, enjoy your weekend? Did you have do anything special? Hang out with the family? Have a couple drinks? Maybe have too many drinks on Friday? Too many drinks on Saturday? You get up and go to church on Sunday? What'd you guys do? Anything fun? Oh, I'm just checking in on you guys. You know I love you. You know I haven't seen you for a couple days and want to start this week off the right way. Give you guys something hopefully to laugh about, something to think about. So much tragedy going on right now. So much chaos. It kind of got me thinking. It got me thinking about how in times of chaos, in times of absolute uncertainty, you can find, I think you can find some pretty good humor. You can find that little golden nugget of comedy. And I want to give you an example of something that happened to me back when I was a young buck. I was probably, I don't know, let's say 17-year-old George Monty working at a pizza place. And it's called Upper Crust Pizza, man. Some of you guys know Upper Crust Pizza. They make a phenomenal pizza. This Italian guy, Frank DeStefano, runs it. It was like a happening spot, man. And like, Frank would hire a bunch of kids. And when I say kids, I mean, you know, everywhere between 15 to like 26. And it was popping there, man. It was it kind of reminded me of, do you guys remember that show Happy Days? And they would all go to like Al's Diner. Was it Al's Diner? You know, where Fonzie would hit the jukebox and he'd be like, hey, the music would come on, but all the kids would go there is what I'm trying to say. It was the happening hangout. And especially Fridays and Saturdays. Like Fridays and Saturdays, it would just be packed in there, like standing room only. And just so, because everybody's listening to this, I want to try to give you some dimensions. So you would walk, you would drive up, and then you would walk in the glass doors, and you would go in the double glass doors. On your right-hand side would be a takeout window with a cash register. And then straight ahead of you would be the dine-in register, about 10 feet from the door. And then you would follow all the way down the corridor, and there would be a bar where you would get your drinks, you know, be it soda or beer or wine or whatever. And then it opened up into like a really big dining room that probably had an occupancy of maybe 230 people. So it was a relatively large place. Had a big screen TV. And just think of your local pizza joint, man. Everybody's got a pizza joint in their town, or at least they did when I was growing up. And this pizza place, it wasn't in a really bad area, but it wasn't in like a great area. It was kind of an older part of town. And it just so happened that place got robbed a couple times. And it just so happened that I was there 2 times it got robbed. And I don't know if anybody has ever been held at gunpoint before, but it can be kind of traumatic. It can also be kind of humorous. I know what you're thinking. It doesn't sound very funny. And it wasn't funny at the time. But looking back at it, there were some funny things that happened. So the first time was like on a Wednesday night. And there was a 3-man closing crew. It was me, my friend Ward, and the manager, Frank DeStefano. And anybody who's ever worked in like a restaurant business knows that like right before you're about to close, we were closing at 10 o'clock, and like we were wiping down the counters and we were putting stuff away and doing the dishes, and you know there was only 3 people there. And so it turned out that Frank, he was in the very back part of like he was actually working on dishes back there. We had the industrial dish cleaner and that kind of stuff, and he took it upon himself just to be the dish guy for that night. I was wiping down like the counters and cleaning up all the dough and, you know, putting stuff away. And Ward, he was out mopping the floor. So he was out in the game room. And the game room, I forgot to mention, is right when you walk into double doors, instead of turning to the right to the cash register, you would take a left and you'd walk down about 20 feet and there would be a game room that had like, I don't know, maybe 10 arcade games in there. And so about 9:50, nobody in the building, nobody there. I'm wiping down, I'm ready to close, get out of there. And Ward comes back with the mop and the bucket, and he says, George, we're going to get robbed right now. People are going to kill us. And Ward was kind of a jokester, but you could tell by the look on his face, he wasn't joking. So I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And he's like, man, I was mopping the game room, and I seen two guys outside the game room window with a gun, man, and they were talking. I'm like, what? What the hell are you talking about? He goes, yeah, dude. He's like, I'm pretty sure they're going to come in here and rob us. And I was, in that moment, that's one of those moments where time kind of slows down and you're like, whoa. I'm trying to process this information from this guy. Obviously, I don't want to get robbed or shot or anything like that, but I want to take him seriously. So he comes into the kitchen area and we're talking, and he goes, man, I'm telling you, dude, shit's about to go down. And as he says that, like I look up, like I hear the door, when the door opens, it has like a little bell, like ding, 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 ding. And so as soon as we're talking, all of a sudden you hear like ding, ding, like someone came in through the front door. And so we get kind of quiet and we look up to the dine-in register, and there's two guys just staring at us at the dine-in register, like waiting to order. And Ward looks at me and I look at him, and he doesn't say anything with his words, but his eyes tell me, hey, these are the guys. And so the guys at the registers, they don't say anything, they're just staring at us. So now I am again processing what Ward said. So I call up Frank, the manager from the back. Hey Frank, can you get the dine-in register? And Frank was in a hurry, he wanted to get out of there. So Frank comes up from the back and he looks at us just standing there. And then he looks at the guys at the dine-in register, and he looks back at me and Ward, and he's like, dude, what the hell's wrong with you guys? And Ward reaches out to grab on Frank's shirt, but Frank kind of shrugs him off. And so Frank walks up to the dine-in register, and he goes, what can I get for you? The guy pulls out a gun and aims it at Frank, and he's like, all your money. One guy comes around, and he points a gun at me and Ward, tells us to get on the ground. It was pretty traumatic. I mean, looking back on it, I don't think I was in any real danger, but it was traumatic. What I found really interesting was that, after they robbed us or whatever, nobody got hurt. We called the cops, and the cops came down and they took our statements. And what I thought was really interesting was that, the cops, they separate you, and then you give your statements individually. So we did that. And then after the cops left, we were sitting around talking, and I asked Ward, hey, what did the guy ask you? Did he ask you the same questions he asked me? And it turned out the cops asked all three of us the exact same questions. However, all three of us had a different description of the perpetrators. I had them wearing a blue hat. Ward had him wearing a red hat. I had him like at 5'6". Ward had him like at 6'1". And it kind of, while not really humorous, it's interesting to think about how your perception of reality changes in times of crisis. It's interesting to think about how your perception of reality changes when you're threatened. And it lends credence to the idea that, your sight is not for accuracy, your sight is for survival. So fast forward about another 6 months. This was on a Friday night. And this is where I found, this one has a little bit more humor to it. fast forward Friday night, it was grad night for Vista High School. And there was inside, we had everybody working. We probably had 25 employees working. We were like a hive of bees. There was people walking in and out of the kitchen into the dining area. There's a line of people at the bar for drinks. There is pizzas in the oven, people making pizzas, people delivering pizzas. And the dining room is at like full capacity. And so we're moving right along, and everybody's working, having a good time, and the people are eating, and all of a sudden you hear this, everybody get the fuck on the ground right now, we're gonna kill you. And then an eruption of chaos. Women screaming, kids screaming. And I remember looking out into the dining room, and people are under their tables. It was one of those moments where it's like a flashbulb memory where, I can recall it, and it seems like it's still pretty fresh. And so, as I gave you the description before, there was 3 guys. One guy they came in the double doors, and one guy went to the right, and he covered the takeout register. The other guy came in straight and covered the dine-in register. And the third guy, he came all the way towards the bar register where there's a little opening where the servers would go in and out to deliver pizzas to the tables, and you could go out and bus tables through that little hallway. The third guy came running in through there, and then he came into the kitchen, and he was pointing at his gun, and again was just screaming at all of us to get on the ground and making some threats. I happened to be right by the bar register where the guy walked in. Could see his gun. I had a buddy of mine, my buddy Kevin. Kevin was older than me, and Kevin was a big guy. He was probably 6'2", maybe 230. Think about like a college football lineman, and that's what this guy looked like. He was a big guy, really funny, super cool guy, and he was working the bar register. And so there's a lot of things that happen, but I'll give you the play-by-play. First off, starting with how I saw it and my conversation with Kevin, because when the guy came through the hallway, of course he yells to get down on the ground, and so Kevin, he is on the ground with his head facing the enter-exit where you would walk in and out between the kitchen and the dining room. And my head is facing his head, so we kind of form like an L. Both of our faces are on the floor, we're kind of starfished out. And the perpetrator had penetrated the hallway past me and is kind of standing behind me on the inside, and he's making his way towards the registers. And so here's where it gets kind of funny. My friend Kevin, now we're laying on the ground, like cheeks on the cold frickin' concrete, right? And he's like, George. I go, yeah, what's up? He says, when the guy comes back, I'm gonna grab his leg. I go, what? What did you say? He says, when the guy comes back, when he runs through, I'm gonna grab his leg. And I'm thinking, like that's a fucking horrible idea. That's what I'm thinking. So I go, I don't say that. I just tell Kevin, like, why are you gonna grab his leg? And Kevin pauses and he's like, what the fuck you talking about? He's robbing us. And I'm like, man, I think it's a bad idea. Like, you don't got any leverage, man. Like, you think you're just gonna reach up and pull him down? Like, you can't do that, man. Like, why don't you just pull on his pant leg and like let him know you're here? The guy has a gun, man. That's a stupid idea. He's like, what? I'm like, why don't you just reach up and like tickle his leg a little bit? And then Kevin gets quiet and he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why would I tickle the guy's leg? He's like, that's stupid. And I'm like, yeah, so was your idea. So as we're bickering, the guy with the gun's like, hey, you two, shut the fuck up. Knock it off over there, motherfuckers. So I tell my friend Kevin, like, I take my hand and I do like the little jazz fingers. I'm like, giddy, 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 giddy. He starts laughing and I start laughing. It's pretty funny. You know, and that's one of those moments of crisis where, you know, it's, like, even now thinking about it, I start laughing. But it was pretty traumatic. It's pretty traumatic. But you can find those little nuggets of humor when crazy things happen like that. Another time, this one is not as violent of a story, but it's more of a story of being kind of quick-witted and having the ability to recover when you find yourself in a position of ridicule. Let me explain to you what happened at this one. So this is in my younger days. I was probably 26, 27, and we had shot out to Vegas, me and my buddy. Actually a lot of us had shot out to Vegas. And it was me and my buddy Mario. A couple girls were with us. I think maybe Chance, Mike, Ray, maybe Bernie. And we went to this big festival, and it was awesome. Had a great time, tearing it up. Had a bunch of booze, did some gambling, and this party was it was like a theme party. So we were all kind of dressed up. I think it was like a pimp and hoe party or something. And so we tore up the whole event, had a great time. And 2:30 or 3 o'clock it shut down, and we ended up hooking up with some people that were going to go to this after hours party. So we're walking to I didn't even know the people whose after hour party it was, but ended up being like at not the penthouse, but pretty high up. It might have been at the Four Seasons out there. And as we were walking, like, I ran into an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. Like, we kind of crossed paths. And I was like, you know how like you're walking and you see a friend, but you're still with your group, so you don't want to stop too long? So I see this guy Ricky. And he's like, dude, what up, George? Oh, Vegas, man, you having fun? I'm like, oh yeah, we're hitting up this after hours party. He goes, oh yeah. And he's like, hey man, put out your hand. I go, all right. And he puts these 2 pills in my hand. He's like, eat those. So I eat them. And like, he stops, like I eat them, and then he just goes quiet and he goes, wait a minute, don't eat those. So I'm like, oh man, what? No, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. I'm like, dude, I already ate them. He starts laughing, goes, no worries. I got some more of those. Those are my last 2. My friend has more. And I'm like, well, what were they? And he's like, oh, those were 2 hits of ecstasy. I was like, what? So, long story longer, I keep walking. I'm like, all right, well, hey, you know what? I might as well enjoy it. So I don't trip out. And it takes we got to catch a cab, and then we walk around a little bit. And by the time we get to the hotel we're going to, the Four Seasons, by the time we get up there and get situated, it's like an hour and a half. And like, dude, there's some like minor celebrities there, and the view is breathtaking, man. I remember just looking out like this huge window and being like, oh my God, what? Dude, is that Dennis Rodman over there? Kind of tripping out, and like, but all of a sudden, like, the pills start hitting me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you've never taken ecstasy before, but about an hour and a half in, 2 hours in, all of a sudden you're like, you're taking some pretty deep breaths. Everything's kind of breathing. Your mouth is dry. You're kind of chewing the inside of your mouth. And I thought it was a pretty good time to take a seat and kind of kick back for a minute. So I'm sitting at the table. There's like a little dining room area, and I'm sitting at this table, and kind of closed my eyes for a little bit because that's how I was feeling. I was enjoying it. Sipping some water. And, I didn't think I had my eyes closed for that long. But I kept feeling like that pins and needles. You know what I mean by that? Like, you kind of feel like the little pins and needles, like if your arm falls asleep or your leg feels asleep, and then when you wake back up, it kind of gets you like that little shocky, that little pins and needles feeling. I was feeling that all over my body, but then like I kept kind of feeling it like on my cheek, but it was a little bit harder. Like it felt like more like a little tapping or something. And I kept feeling it like every few seconds. And so I'm like, what the heck is that? And so I kind of open my eyes, and I probably look like I was just out of control. I mean, I was out of control. Who am I kidding? And so I feel it on my cheek again, and I open my eyes, and I look around, and I see these two girls in the kitchen that were like, oh man, they were beautiful. Like, they were Vegas beautiful. You know what I mean by that? They were Vegas beautiful. Like, they were all wearing some kind of designer dress, but like they just looked really attractive, really sexy, and their hair was all done. They looked really pretty. And I looked at them, and I looked around, and they were just talking to themselves. And plus, I'm out of it, man. I'm like 2 pills deep, so I don't really know what's going on. And so I just looked down at the ground. There's like these little it looks like little balls on the ground. I'm trying to put this together. I'm like, dude, what the hell? And as I'm doing that, pink, like a spit wad, hits me on the cheek. And then like I come to the realization, oh, these fucking girls. These girls are shooting spit wads at me. Right? So like as I'm thinking that, like I hear them chuckling. And I'm like, these girls. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, how do I tackle this situation? I got 2 hot girls spitting spit wads at me. How do I turn this thing around? So I raise up my head and I look over there and I catch them like, girl had the straw in her mouth. And I'm like, haha. I look at them and I smile and I'm like, hey, are you girls shooting spit wads at me? And they both start laughing, and they were like, yeah, we definitely were. We had a bet to see how many we could hit you with before you realized it. And I kind of started laughing, and I'm like, well, who won the bet? And they're like, well, no one yet. And so they're like, well, we were just kind of worried about you too. Like you were like kind of mumbling and like you were bobbing your head all crazy. Are you all right? And I'm like, you know what, ladies? You have no idea what happened to me on the way out here. It's the craziest story that has ever happened in my life, and I'm trying to process it. I don't know if anybody can make any sense of it. And so now I've piqued their interest. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. You want to hear it? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. So in this room, there's probably like 50 people. And as I tell the girls I'm gonna tell you the story, they kind of come over and they sit down and they're like, well, hey, who are you here with? And I'm like, oh, see that guy over there? That's my buddy Mario. He's playing some dominoes or something over there. And they're like, oh, you're with that guy? And I'm like, yeah, see those girls over there, the twins over there? I'm with them. And they're like, what? You're not with those girls? I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm not with them. I mean, they're all with me. Kind of flip it on them a little bit. So they start laughing. And they didn't believe me. They're like, those are not your friends. And I'm like, those are totally my friends. So I say, hey, Mario, what up? Hey, I'm going to tell him that story about the ride out here. Kind of give him the heads up, like I'm going to tell the story. And then I tell the girls, like, hey, ladies, I'm going to tell this girl the story. Do you care? And they're like, oh, George, you going to tell him that story? I'm like, yeah. And so as I do that, more people are beginning to hear me talk. And so those 2 girls that were in the kitchen come and they sit down next to me. And as I call for my friend Mario, and then the girls, they hear me about to tell the story. So they kind of walk over this way a little bit, and they bring the people they were talking to. So as I begin the story, started off with 2 people, and then 4, and then 10, and then, everybody in that room was kind of jacked up. So as the story progressed, I pretty much got everybody's attention. And I'll tell you the story like I told it to them. So here's what transpired. So those girls come and sit down next to me. Let me get a drink of water. So those girls come and sit down next to me. And they're like, okay, tell me what happened. I go, all right. I go, well, me and my buddy Mario and these 2 beautiful ladies right here, we were on our way to Vegas. And, we were driving I had a 76 Cadillac Eldorado. It was badass. And we're driving. And me and my buddy Mario, super cool cat. Sometimes we would, we're too like that. We were 2 young swinging dicks, and we would always kind of compete with each other a little bit. And you know how guys are, man, especially young guys, just talking a lot of shit. And so we get out to like a little bit past Barstow, which for us was a little bit past halfway. And there's there's nothing out there. And I don't know if I don't think it was Zizix. It was some obscure off-ramp, but there was like a guy out there that was like, dude, he's like a bum. You know what I mean? He had like a long trench coat on, scraggly hair. He had all his belongings in like a plastic shopping bag. And so we're cruising, and my buddy Mario goes, hey, George, I dare you to pick that guy up. And I'm like, dude, that guy up there? And I'm like, I'll fucking do it. Because he's trying to get, you know what I mean? He's trying to make me look like a punk. He's like, I'll make you look dumb in front of these girls. But me, with my ego, I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And so as I slow down the Cadillac, like, I pull over a little bit. And dude, the guy he was a real gem. You know what I mean by like that? He just looked like the wrong guy to pick up. So, of course, I pick him up. And it gets even crazier because... So, in the Cadillac, there was... I'm driving, my buddy was sitting shotgun, and then the 2 girls are in the back. So, the hitchhiker, he jumps in the back, and he gets in next to the girls. Now, already, I know what you're thinking. You're like, this is a horrible idea, George. And that's exactly what I was thinking. And so, in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, we'll just drive for a little bit, and then we'll kick this guy out or something. And it was a really awkward silence. So the guy gets in, and I start driving a little bit, and now all of us are like, okay, what are we doing? This is dumb. And, like, he kind of scoots over close to the girls. Like, the girls are sitting next to each other on the left side, and now he's right next to him on the right-hand side. And, to make some conversation, people are trying to ask him questions. Like, one of the girls asks him, oh, hey, what's your name? And like he's just dead silent. He doesn't say anything. And then she tries again, like, oh, where are you headed to? And like he just doesn't say anything. He just has like his eyes are like stone, just staring forward. And so my buddy Mario turns around and he's like, what's up, man? He's like, hey, what you got in your bag there? And the guy's like, fuck you, none of your goddamn business what's in my bag. Like he didn't say anything, but when you talked about his bag, dude, he started flipping. My buddy Mario's a pretty big guy. So like I could see him kind of change. My buddy Mario's like, okay, I'm gonna have to knock this clown out. And so we're driving a little bit, and I'm looking, there's no real pull off, so I can't really pull off, but I'm thinking like, okay, I'm at the next little turnout, I'm gonna pull off and fucking kick this guy out of here. And so I'm trying to make time, looking for a spot. So I turn around and I'm like, dude, listen, man, we're cool enough to give you a ride. If you got a gun or you got some drugs in there. Because now I'm thinking, dude, maybe the guy's got a gun in there. Maybe he's got something in there that like, could kill us. Or maybe he's got something in there that's like contraband. Or, why would he get all butthurt when you ask about his bag? And so I am driving. I'm like, look, man, if you got like some drugs, you got a gun in there, just tell us, and look, we're going to drop you off, but I want to know what's in there so that, if we get pulled over or something, I'm not responsible for it. And he's like, fuck you, none of your goddamn business what's in my bag. Fuck all you guys, man. You all want my fucking bag? None of your goddamn business what's in my bag. So at this point in time, there's nowhere to turn over. So I just pull off kind of by the side of the road and we get out. And the guy gets it, like, open the door. My buddy Mario jumps out. Like, the girls are super scared. So Mario jumps out the side, grabs this guy, pulls him out. I get out the driver's side and I come around. And, like, there's some shoving that goes on. And, like, dude, my buddy Mario just, shoves this guy super hard. He falls to the ground. He gets back up. And then he kind of gets in our face and he's cussing. And he's like, yeah, motherfucker, you just being a belligerent. You know what I mean? Just being a belligerent. He's like, you just want to fucking steal my bag. None of your business what's in my bag. And so, like, that's it. We pushed him. We didn't hit him or run him over or anything like that. We just pushed him, and then he got up and started walking away. So, imagine that so far. Imagine that process. Now, I'm telling this story in front of this whole room of people, some of whom I know and some of whom I don't know. And the whole room is now listening to my whole story, like just hanging on the edge. Like 50 people at this party, especially the two girls that were shooting spitwads at me. It's important. And so, back to the story. After we push the guy, he runs out. We jump back in the Cadillac, and we're driving. And the girls, they just let me and my buddy Mario, they're like, you guys are so dumb. Like, why would you do that? First off, that guy sat back here with us. We were in danger. You guys are fucking egomaniacs. That was so dumb. You put us in danger, and, that could have been a real issue. And so, obviously, they're right. They're right. And so, there's another uncomfortable silence for, 10 minutes. Like, we're all just kind of processing what happened. Like, yeah, that was really dumb. We shouldn't have done that. And so, then one of the girls says, guys... And we're like, yeah. She goes, that fucking guy left his bag in here. And we were all like, what? No way. She goes, yeah, he fucking left it right here in the middle of the seat. It was crazy. Like, all that smack talking, all that shit about none of your business what's in the bag, and the fucking guy left it right in the seat. I know what you're thinking. Because everybody at the party was thinking the same thing. Right when I said that, right when I said to the whole party, I said, listen, then the guy left his fucking bag in the car. You know what everybody in unison said at the party? In one voice. But the two girls next to me that were shooting spitwads, what was in the bag? What was in the bag? And then you know what I said? None of your fucking business. Oh! And the crowd goes wild. And the crowd goes wild. George Monty swinging for the fences. And that, my friends, is how I turned that particular situation around. Which was not easy considering the state that I was in. Which just goes to prove, if you can take a few minutes to think about your strategy, then 9 out of 10 times you can come up with an idea that'll win. And a lot of times the idea that will win will be the idea that makes people laugh. I took these, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. These girls were looking at me like I was some sort of a wounded dog. I could see it in their eyes shooting spitwads at me. 15 minutes later, they're looking at me like, oh my God, look at this guy. Which brings up another point. He who learns to speak in front of crowds well will never have to dine or sleep alone. So that's what we got today. Finding humor in adversity, having the ability to think under pressure, and coming up with ideas that make people laugh. If you can harness those little tidbits, I think you can find more meaning in your life and understand that when something crazy happens to you, It doesn't have to be a tragic event. It can be an opportunity. I love you guys. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great Monday. Aloha.